But first, question time today. Finally, a little bit of fight from the Libs. Now we know it has been a rough year. They started the year thinking they were going to win government. They end the year with a whole lot of problems. They lost an awful lot of seats on top of the previous amount of seats that they'd lost at the last election, and of course all of the internal fighting about which way to go when it comes to net zero. But there are plenty of things to remain angry about when it comes to this government. They are arrogant, they are up themselves, they are spending too much money. I'll detail that more in a second. So today a bit of back and forth, and good on them for not backing down.
Government spending is running 4 times faster than the economy. Given that repeatedly the Treasurer refuses to take responsibility for this, Prime Minister, will you take responsibility?
No. You are hopeless. You are hopeless and a liar. And a liar. Lying to the Australian people. If lying is in order, then lying is in order. This is a liar. A liar. That's what we're debating here, and I'm happy to debate it.
Yeah, good. Bugger them. These people, they fly far too high, and like Icarus, we know what happens in the end, but we'll see what happens. That said, let's get to spending other people's money. Another example, another day, another $1 billion of other people's money. Now, the reality is that what they are willing to tell us publicly, and we know this government loves hiding everything under a rug, Chalmers is going to set us off on not 1, not 2, not 5, but probably 10 years of deficits, or at least what the forward years are telling us. When you have a look at the Treasury numbers, that becomes 40 years of budget deficits. We already have $1 trillion in debt, because every single one of those little blue lines added on top of each other makes it $1 trillion. Once we head 10 years down the track, it might be a lot higher than $1 trillion. You add another few to that, you add a few, you add a few. According to these predictions, we're going to end up on the best part of at least $2 trillion. But nothing to see here, because you see this government thinks that they have 100% sewn up Australian politics, that they will never lose again. That whoever's currently the last member of the backbench will eventually get their turn to be Prime Minister. They will rule forever, which means while they keep one eye on running this joint, they keep another eye on impressing the world. As we know, the Prime Minister, despite the fact that when Airbus Albo was something he worried about, he wouldn't go anywhere near the UN. Well, of course, now he's Mr. International, isn't he? Handsome boy in Beijing, best mate in Washington, D.C. Can't pull a crowd at the UN. But the plan is that they would like to take Australia's plans when it comes to climate change global. In fact, they would like the globe to come to Australia to discuss these things. The COP meetings are the ones where Boris Johnson held a couple of years ago in the United Kingdom. That was the one that, of course, Joe Biden slept through. Apparently, despite the fact that Australia is just 1% of the world's problems, we plan to be 100% of the world's solution in a couple of years' time. This is going to cost apparently $1 billion for us to host a UN climate summit in Adelaide. I love Adelaide. It deserves as many events as possible, but this is, of course, ridiculous. Firstly, Turkey is also bidding with us at the same time, bidding against us as if we're going for a soccer World Cup or an Olympic Games. The idea that we can't do a deal, wait our turn, whatever. But secondly, the idea that when theoretically every dollar counts, that we've got $1 billion to put on a look at us show when we are 1% of the world's problem. And even if we did 100% of what even a Tiffany Teal would like to take place, guess what? It will not affect the global climate. Why? Because, show you again, the climate clock. Australia is 1% of the world's problem. You can see China takes us from top of the clock to quarter past. The rest of the world, the third world, will take you to half past. The United States will take you to probably about, somewhere on the way to 22. India, Russia, 45 minutes of the climate clock. Australia could do absolutely everything, and it will not stop the intensity because the countries that are much bigger problems are travelling much slower or not at all. Yet Australia is apparently going to find $1 billion from where I don't know, and presumably if we're not going to cut anything, then it's going to go on the credit card, and the credit card's only already one $1 trillion. And don't buy the BS that, it's the Libs who ruin the economy. That's JobKeeper. That was JobSeeker. The cost of hosting next year's United Nations Climate Change Summit in Adelaide would be at least $1.4 billion. By the way, not according to some far right-wing think tank, not a number that somebody's pulling out of their backside, but the Albanese government's own estimates, further fueling mixed views within the cabinet about the desirability of securing the event. Separate government sources confirmed $1 billion hosting cost, but they would not divulge the details because it all depends on what's in and what's not. At previous COPs, there have been tens of thousands of people. At other COPs, there's been more than 100,000 people who come. Now, understandably, there are plenty who say, if this government has $1 billion, maybe there is a better way and a better place to put that $1 billion. But of course, they will spend the $1 billion because they don't care about $1 trillion. They don't care about hundreds of millions of dollars blowout in public services. They don't care that almost 40% of the Australian federal budget is welfare compared to about 5% that's national defence. All they care about is the triangle of dependence, where you get a handout from the government, you work for the government, or, of course, the government is your biggest customer. That's all they care about, because the bigger the triangle becomes, the more likely no one rocks the boat and nobody gets rid of the government. Hence why Victoria is where it is. Hence why, until recently, Queensland is where it was. Hence why Australia is about to get the sort of Andrews-style approach on the national level. And that triangle of dependence, nothing more, nothing less, will be the reason why they're probably going to cement themselves in for some time. But David Littleproud, the leader of the Nationals, we know they're not into the net zero thing, so they wouldn't be interested in this being hosted at all, have a view about $1 billion being spent on this.
I think this government's priorities are all wrong, and we could spend that billion or even $500 million in a lot better ways. That'd build your hospital somewhere across this country over the next 5 years instead of spending it on a conference that goes for 2 weeks.
Well, I got an idea about where we could spend $1.4 billion that would change people's lives for probably the next 20 years. And it is helping the charities of this country that take care of people who run out of food. You know how often I have spoken about Food Bank. You know how often I spoke about it for years in the first term, in the lead up to the election, and now post. Today, they released their new report for 2025. This is shocking reading. This is heartbreaking reading. Every page a receipt of the deceit of a government that promises to make things better, but because they piss money away like this, as opposed to giving money to organisations like Food Bank, we get into a scenario where in this very report, 50% of houses in New South Wales and the ACT that are currently renting have problems with food on the table at least once a week. 28% of people paying off a mortgage. Every one of those households, and remember, a household could have 1 or 10 people in it. So 1.1 million households is a lot more than 1.1 million people. Yet these wankers are going to spend $1 billion fluffing themselves up on the global stage because Australia needs to look like we are the solution when we are 1% of the problem. It's a disgrace what they are doing. And I saw the Prime Minister in Question Time today try to pretend, the Libs don't care about Food Bank. Well, guess who was the only party at the last election who was promising extra money for Food Bank? Oh, that's right, the very people who are still asking questions about it and the people who you say, Prime Minister, don't care. The test about whether someone cares or not is what you are doing with your ability to spend our money. Now, the federal government does give some money to Second Bite, to Food Bank, but collectively it's less than $100 million. In just one state and the Capital Territory where our parliament sits, 1.1 million households are in a scenario where they're running out of food. To be precise, 682,000 households in Australia. Could have one person, could have 10 people in them. They are skipping meals or they are missing meals at least one day a week. Do not tell me that the single most important thing for Australia is to make sure that we can look good on the international stage so many of the people who are currently working in government will eventually be able to go off and work for the very industries of which they are currently separating the seas for. Because that's the reality. After the pensions that fell away in 2004, the current day politician is often looking forward to their next career. And too often we see, as we have in decades before, as we will in decades to come, the people who regulate industries are able to go and then work for the industries. Geez, I wonder how they end up with such a great relationship with those industries. It is a disgrace that when a government has a choice of how to spend $1 billion, it'll spend it on the collective wank that is going to be COP in Adelaide, and they will not give anywhere near $1 billion to the charities who make sure people have something to eat. Now, the problem is, in many ways, because of the bastardry at times of this Prime Minister, the pig-headedness and arrogance of the people around him, including the Treasurer, is that they will almost punish an organisation like Food Bank because people they don't like me, notice that organisations like Food Bank are in the world of pain that they are. It says everything about the morality of the people in charge that when they decide a priority, when they're going to put money on a credit card, they're going to spend it on $1 billion on a climate change conference that, by the way, the Prime Minister has not attended. He won't attend the one this year. He didn't the one last year. You see, where it's somewhere else, it's not as important. When it's here, we're going to roll out the red carpet for the world, and he's going to be the global leader for an event he considers not significant enough to actually attend himself when it's not in Australia. Now, this report, I repeat, is a disgrace. And I'm not talking about the way it's put together. I'm talking about the story that it tells. And as you can tell, a lot of pages and a lot of stories. I'll tell them until there is a government somewhere, somehow, that pulls the finger out of its backside and actually helps, instead of coming up with sugar hits to get through an election because all that matters is staying in freaking power. Imagine if you had the capacity to be able to make sure that your next door neighbour was able to eat 3 square a day and you chose not to, because that's exactly the choice of these people as they continue to underfund these organisations. Do not punish Food Bank, Prime Minister, because I keep talking about it. Fair income. These people, honestly. Another example, right? Let's here talk about Daniel Andrews. Now, long gone from the Australian political scene, but yet again, perfect example about somebody who's full of BS, and then guess what? When the receipts drop, you end up paying more. No one cares. Well, I do, and we're going to follow up. At the last Victorian election, one of the 2 most popular policies, one was the Liberals, which I think was about $1 for public transport. The other was for Daniel Andrews to introduce what was called the State Energy Commission. This was a state government-owned power company that would not just sell but generate electricity through all of those renewables. Remember, one of the reasons why we had to do this, and this was all just a complete distraction, again, excellent politics. Nobody talked about the 33 people who died as a result of 000. No one talked about world's longest lockdowns. Nobody talked about the kids that have gone backwards in education or those exposed to abuse. No, this arsehole got re-elected and was given a little gold medal for his efforts, because that's what our system rewards. Because when the triangle of dependence is as rock hard as it is, when Labor governments and Democratic Socialist Labor governments continue to grow it, so it's all one of 3 things. You're either somebody who is wedded to the government being Labor on welfare, you are wedded to the government being Labor because you work for the government or because they are the biggest client to your business. This is the whole game. The whole game. Well, what was his promise when he tried to make this, and successfully, a full distraction from his previous 4 years in the job? What was the promise of the SEC, former Premier?
Bringing back the SEC makes all of this possible. It allows us to take that next step. Electricity, that's not about profit, it's about people. It's not owned by a greedy company, it's owned by every single Victorian. That's lower bills, lower emissions, more jobs, more skills, and a much brighter future.
Well, guess what report came out today? Victoria ups power price forecasts now that the SEC is a market player. So literally one of the reasons why power prices are going to increase in Victoria is because the very thing that he just told you was going to be cheaper is now part of the process that's going to make it more expensive. Victoria's Energy Department predicts wholesale energy prices will be significantly higher than previously expected, in another sign of upward pressure on power costs in the state. The new estimates published in the Department of Environment and Energy's Climate Action, or DEECA, for those who care, and it talks about the megawatt prices, but the bit that really matters in the article, the department said it's updated its forecast so it can accord more closely with the private sector because the contracts would be taken over by the State Electricity Commission, which triggered the need for different methodology. So, former Premier Andrews, why do we need the SEC? Because we need it because it's not for profit, it'll bring prices down. What actually happens once the SEC is up and running? Well, power prices are going to go up, aren't they? Yet Victoria will probably turn around and reward them. Why? Because of the freaking triangle. So every time they announce a little way of growing it here, a little way of growing it there, they lock themselves in. So no matter what failures, 33 people died before the last Victorian state election because the Triple O system didn't work. Guess what's happening just before this system? Just before this election. The Triple O system is still stuffed. They haven't been able to fix it. And when things get tough, they start passing around pieces of paper. Why would anyone re-elect them? Again, I yelled 4 years ago. I will yell again into the wind when it comes to Victoria. But it's only Victorians who'll make their choice. And how can anyone be happy with the bed they're lying in when you are being lied to by the very people who are tucking you in at night? Fair dinkum. Now, another one. I'm on a roll here tonight. Let's keep going. The social media ban, which is on its way. It'll be there at the start of December. And yes, lots of international countries are looking to see how we can do it. We're kind of going to be this test case. And yes, it is something that, remember, that's right, Peter Dutton, evil Peter Dutton, first came up with, then flogged by the government. And the government will now, of course, cover itself in gold as this thing moves around. Well, today we learned that plenty of other social media platforms, or ones that work like social media, will be added to the list. Not a huge amount of notice for them, but again, who cares? It's the big steamroller of government, meaning that these platforms will have to play by the same rules as Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
Reddit and live streaming platform Kik are among the latest apps added to Australia's world-first social media ban.
The popular online messaging board Reddit will be included in Australia's social media ban for under 16s.
Reddit and Kik will both be included in the list of social media platforms to be banned.
Now, I get it. Most of you have either very little use for those platforms or maybe this is the first time that you're hearing about them. But for obvious reasons, lots of young people, lots of different ways to express themselves on the internet. Remember, the whole point and purpose of this is to give kids back their youth, to make sure that the places that they do operate in are safe and the ones that can't be fully secured, they are effectively fenced out of. Well, this is a system that, again, is going to get gold medals because it's put in place by the current government, cheered on by the media, who see an opposition that is going to slowly but surely eat itself alive, meaning we better not upset the apple cart. But it's not rolling out perfectly. In fact, this is what the communications spokesperson for the opposition has had to say today. You probably didn't see it because they don't even bother running them anymore.
I have a lot of issues with the outcome of the ban and whether it's going to do what it is intended to do in protecting Australian children. 10th of December, it's only a couple of weeks out. There seems to be a whole lot of angst going on in the community as well, and whether the advertising campaign that the government's put forward is even going to work. Families don't really know it's coming, schools don't know, kids don't know.
All of this you've heard. But let me get to the big bit that happened today, and a smart cookie who worked out a potential problem that could be even bigger than the dangers that currently exist for our young when it comes to stuff they do on the internet. All right? Now, today, the E-Safety Commissioner was there with, of course, the Minister for Freebies and Communication. We'll check her declarations at the end of the year. And it has been exposed that for all of the tough talk about, giving kids back their youth, all the rest of it, there is a big problem that's not really being dealt with at all, which is gaming. Now, I'm not going to sit here and be one of those people who's going, what, video games are ruining the world? People have been saying that since Mario was in 8-bit. Leisure Suit Larry, remember, was going to end the world. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? Well, the problem with technology these days and many of the gaming is that if you are sitting on a particular games console, if I mention them, I will be off to the lawyers, so I will not. But for many, they are online. They can pass messages. They sometimes have open messages, meaning random members of the internet, including the worst possible people on the internet, are able to communicate with them. And none of this seems to be affected by the changes that are coming. Put simply, they won't be able to have an account to some things, but they will be able to have an account to other things that work basically exactly the same as social media. Well done to those who pointed this out today, saying the line between gaming and socialising has disappeared years ago. David Swan writing in the Nine Press today. Kids don't neatly separate their Roblox chats from their Instagram or Twitch streams. Roblox, Discord and Twitch have virtually identical social features to platforms that are being banned. Roblox offers direct messaging, friend networks, group spaces, user-generated content sharing and customisable profiles, exactly like Instagram and Facebook. The platforms Australia exempted aren't hypothetical risks. Since 2018, 24 people have been arrested in the United States for abducted or sexually abusing children being groomed on, yep, you guessed it, the platform that is not affected by this legislation. In 2023 alone, Roblox reported 13,000 instances of child exploitation to authorities. The AFP Commissioner specifically warned of things called crime-fluencers using Roblox to target vulnerable girls while reporting by their newspaper, has revealed children exposed to sexually abusive material and extremist content on the platform. When asked about all of this today, try and work out this gobbledygook from the people that are in charge of this ban. Why is one in? Why is one out? Why are you able to get to your kids one way, but you can't get to them another? Please explain, genius.
We also have to think about, would kids who are using Roblox today, they use the chat functionality and messaging so that they can online gameplay. If the online gameplay is the significant or sole purpose, if that were taken away, would the kids still use that messaging functionality to chat? Probably not. So that's just to give you some insight in terms of how much rigor that was done with each of the assessments.
Garbage. Many and most of the people asking questions, they don't use these platforms, let alone the conversations about the bigger international console games and the capacity to sit there with a headset on and talking to some creep on the other side of the world. We're either going to be serious about it or we're not. Now, I know there are plenty of people who get frustrated about the implementation of this, the digital ID and all the rest, but if this thing is actually about protecting kids, let's go the whole hog. Why do we have a system which has such an obvious loophole? Well done to everyone who pointed it out today. Of course, the guy on Sky News is talking about it, so therefore we must ignore it. Well, I'll tell you who doesn't. It's fellow parents, because they see all of these shutdowns here and largely cool. But why not a shutdown here? Oh, and by the way, the eSafety Commissioner might want to read one of the reports that a very own organisation has put out about gaming. In one of the sections here, in the past year, 2 in 5 young gamers, 40% of children aged between 8 and 12, 44% of teens 13 to 17, had a negative experience while gaming. This, among other things, are about being asked to send nudes or sexual information. Another one, read your own report, eSafety Commissioner. 2 in 3, 65%, of young gamers who received or were asked to send nude images or sexual information. If they can't get to you via Instagram, they might be able to get to you through the headset while you're playing insert game that if I mentioned, lawyers would get involved. Why is this not a hole that needs to be plugged? But of course, we're mentioning it. I'm not tetchy, I'm pissed off. Because our joint is changing for the worse, and some of the most arrogant people who have ever sat on the government benches are at the maximum of their power, and they see themselves as being beyond challenge.